Precious Lord, take my hand, lead me on, help me stand.
This is your bladder, and this is your baby right here. He's jumping for you. Look at him.
Wow, I can't believe how developed he is. Look at him move.
Yeah, he's been well developed since 8 weeks. He's had all his parts. Look at him. Oh, look at you.
How come I can't feel that?
You won't until the 4th month, but he's been moving in there since 8 weeks. He's got a whole lot of room in the womb to move, and with all that fluid, they're able to move around, do somersaults. You know, look at him. Do you believe it? You're going to have your hands full, girl. Look at that.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Love Them Both. This is a unique talk show on abortion, the sacredness of human life, and the great moral crises of our time. You know that many people do not know that the authority of the Bible, its divine authority, is proven by the numerous fulfilled prophecies over the centuries, where it foretold events in advance, including the outline of world history, and including down to our present time, the 2,400 years ago, fulfilling the return of the Jews to the Holy Land and the world crisis in the Middle East that we are experiencing today. The Bible then, with this authority, the Bible tells us that God created man in his own image. Male and female created he them. And God gave us the 10 Commandments as a guide for developing true freedom, the kind of freedom that comes from self-control, being the master of your own self, and a guide to develop the kind of character that enables you to be high on life instead of being high on physically based substances such as pornography, sexual addiction, or drugs and the like. The 10 Commandments also serve as a schoolmaster to bring us into a life-fulfilling relationship with God as sons or daughters through Jesus Christ. For these wonderful reasons, it is the love of God that we keep his commandments, and his commandments are not grievous. And the previous reasons really point to why. But the heart of fallen man just has devised one evil after another, creating one humanitarian crisis after another. This show, our show, Love Them Both, deals with the fallout from that, the serious individual and humanitarian suffering that results from ignoring, rejecting God and his 10 Commandments. Keep a pen handy and paper during our show. We have several helplines at the bottom of the screen from time to time with high quality, where you can be put in contact with free and high quality help if you are pregnant and scared, or if you're suffering the pain of a past abortion, or you want to consider adoption. We have a pregnancy care helpline that'll appear on our screen during the show from time to time. And if you, concerning human trafficking and white slavery, or if you are being held in bondage or and have evidence that someone is being held in bondage, you could also call the confidential Health and Human Services trafficking hotline for direction as to how to proceed to help this person. With that, I'll ask you to watch this important educational message we'll be right back.
I'm wondering what you'll be when you grow up, what you'll do and where you'll go. On this road you'll travel far. There's one thing that you can know for sure. Your daddy's here and will love you. Caring and protecting daddy's girl is what I'll do. When your childhood is all through, when you leave and live out on your own, your daddy's here and will love you. Caring and protecting daddy's girl is what I'll do.
Pornography is not victimless. Real men defend women and children no matter whose daughters they are. Become a defender today.
Welcome back, everyone. Well, that educational message really points to the theme of our show today, and the title of our show, of this show, is "Be a Man" Part 2. And the title continues, "Don't patronize adult entertainment or prostitution." Part 1, we discussed the fact that how is it that men come to the point of spending money on adult entertainment, on sexual services. And in Part 1, we discussed it. It begins with the visualization of graphic images, visualizing nudity or sexual images. It doesn't happen overnight. It's a process. We saw that soft porn could be defined as mere nudity, whereas hard porn may be defined as viewing sexual organs and sexual images, sexual organs and sexual acts up close. Hard porn is very addictive, and we can hardly mention, we really shouldn't, when we talk about pornography, we shouldn't fail to mention the serial killer Ted Bundy. If you may have seen his interview with Dr. James Dobson in Florida State Penitentiary the night before he was executed for murdering more than 20-some women that were known about. But Ted Bundy wanted the world to know, wanted us to understand that it was pornography that got a grip on him and led him into serial crime. There's a cost to lust. We saw in Part 1 how visualization it requires women and children to be in photographs and pornography, and that creates a demand to procure women and children to be in those pictures and films, and leads to a black market in which organized crime, ethnic mafias, force, lure, or otherwise coerce women and young girls into white slavery. White slavery being a term referring to a sexual slavery. The women and children are the victims. A former federal prosecutor from Cleveland said that up through the 1950s, pornography was kind of sold a mom and pop business. It was sold in the back room of mom and pop stores. But after the 1950s, organized crime, he said, moved in and took it over nationwide, and really headquartered it out of California and distributed nationwide. They skimmed, he said that organized crime skimmed $1 million a day in cash from pornography across the nation. So there's money to be made because if we view these pictures by the adult magazines, or spend money on any sexual entertainment. With that, I'll ask the control room if they can show clip number 1 on the mini DV titled Supply and Demand.
And this so-called product is provided to the buyer in every variety and at every opportunity. The sex market is fueled by demand. To keep up with that demand, it must maintain a steady supply. And in the sex market, a major source of the supply is vulnerable women and children, trafficked into sexual slavery.
And it's like, where do they get all these girls? And they constantly have girls just coming in and out. You see a new face there every time you go.
So we see then that that clip represented how just to provide the adult magazines, porn videos that you may think is harmless to buy requires a black market in kidnapping women and children and trapping them to be in those pictures by one method or another. Women and children don't do shameful acts, don't do sexual acts naturally any more than you would before the whole world to see, whether it be in a magazine or an internet. They have to be forced, tricked, or otherwise coerced into doing it. It's a true white slavery. But looking at graphic images, whether it's hard porn or soft porn, is just pictures. Visualization can lead to actualization. And there are related markets that exist which lure the buyer into actualization. Strip clubs, peep shows, adult films, chat lines where the buyer begins to take some steps to actualize, do more than just look at pictures. Now, a buyer may be defined as anyone who a buyer is defined as anyone who spends money on a commercial sex act, regardless of how remote, how small it may seem. A drink in a strip club, a picture in a porn magazine, all contribute to the need for women to provide, children to provide these services. As buyers, as buyers spend more and more money on related markets, such as strip clubs, peep shows, chat lines, the sex markets grow, and the demand for women and children for these growing markets also increases. It's driven by buyer spending, buyer demand, what you're willing to spend money on. The demand grows then to traffic. As the buyer spends more and more money, the sex markets grow, and the demand grows to enslave and trap more and more women to provide the sexual services by the growing sex market. For example, and women and children are the victims. For example, I'll read here from a portion of an article. Canada abruptly ends special visas for exotic dancers. And what this article shows is that even the government, that facilitates deceiving women, in this case mainly Romanian women, coming to Canada without telling them, by not telling them they were going to be forced into prostitution. I'll quote here, "Strippers returning from Canada have complained of forced prostitution when the pressure to comply was rejected by any of the women. Their exotic dancer visas were revoked, and they were deported." Now, let me get a little background for this. Romania is a poor country, and in poverty, people have pressure on them. You can die from poverty too, if it gets real bad. And so there's great pressure on women in poor countries to making them more vulnerable and susceptible to be lured into schemes to go to other countries as dancers, thinking that they're going to be models or dancers, in this case, dancers. I'll go on. Many of the Romanian girls we interviewed complained of being coerced into prostitution in Canada by club owners and lied to by the Canadian officials. The Canadian officials lied to them because they didn't tell them they were going to be prostituted. The government did that. Since they were coming because they needed jobs and livelihood. To be threatened with deportation meant they were losing, what they had hoped to be was a source of income. So that constituted a threat to them too. I'll go on. There are also threats of arrest and deportation if they refuse to participate in additional, quote, VIP services. There we go with VIP, using language again to semantics, to sugarcoat. VIP services means making the woman a slave as a prostitute for some juvenile male who thinks he wants to, it's appropriate to buy sexual services. Canadian officials fail to inform the females that in Canada, lap dancing invariably involves sex, full contact, and penetration. The immigration minister who defended the strip clubs industry as having a right to their labor market needs approved, unquote. So you see, what they weren't telling these girls that they promised jobs as dancers was that they were going to have to do prostitution too. They left that little detail out, and the women become victims again. So you see, it's the women and children who are the victims. Another example of women being victimized in strip clubs is the story of Kristen. This is an interview, excerpts from an interview similar to the one I read last time, of a dancer. I'll break in here how it started with her. Like so many little girls, all she wanted was her father's love. Tragically, her father sexually abused her. Those are my words there. At 10, she ran away for good. And let me interject here. To any young girls out there or any girls who may be being sexually used, take a lesson from this accounts such as these, and don't jump from the frying pan into the fire by running away unless you're going to Children and Family Services or to a safe place. Don't go away if you're. I'll read what she did here. What happened to her. At 10, she ran away for good, hitching a ride to a truck stop back to Memphis, Tennessee. Club owners, here are these adult male club owners, happy to take her in, picked her up on the street in Memphis. Now, they were out looking for teens and children on the streets because they knew they could lure them in. So this is why you don't want to just, if you have to flee from a home due to abuse, perhaps you would consider contacting a responsible relative in your family, such as a grandparent or a responsible aunt or uncle. And if you can't find help within your own family, perhaps go to school officials, teachers, or the school nurse. The school nurse would be required by law to report your child abuse to the authorities. So I'll go on here. By 11, this girl was only 11 years old. By 11, she was making hardcore porn movies, appearing in hardcore magazines and having sex with the club owners and anyone else that they allowed. Now, she was 11-year-old, a girl from a poor home, an abused home. She really didn't have the majority of mind to know what was going on. So she said, I was making, I thought I was special, she said Kristen. I was making money, and I thought that this is what life was all about. Here she thought she was being kind of a movie star, this 11-year-old child. I'll go on down, skipping on down here. She began dancing at the club at 14 years old, 14 years of age. The owners were protected by a fake ID that said Kristen was over 18 years old. Kristen danced at the at the early age of 14 because she looked like a child. The juvenile males who go to strip clubs are pedophiles often, looking for children. Kristen goes on. They kept me on drugs, she said, referring to the owners. I started on Valium and later did them all. I was never my own self, she said. And here's a key point about, again, pointing to the involuntary nature of almost all of this activity. Once they get you hooked, they have you. Once she was addicted to drugs, or any prostitute is addicted to drugs, then the pimp or the traffickers can control her as her drug supply. She now needs the drugs. But she goes on here. Okay, not only did Kristen dance, but she would also escort the owner's big clients when they came into town. Her job was to fill their every desire. Escorting a client would bring her $300. Remember, she was a dancer that you might see typically in a strip club. And the owner would get $800 to $1,000. But here's the point about it. It's not voluntary. One point about it. When I refused, I would get beat up, she said. So I quit refusing. Today, her body is covered with scars where she was beaten with a switch embedded with a metal blade. This could be that dancer that you spend money on, keeping her entrapped in the strip club. In addition to pleasing escorts, Kristen would get called into an office at least weekly to have sex with an owner or the bouncer. And remember, she couldn't refuse. Some women who refused the desires of the owner were killed, and suicide notes left on their cars of other dancers. Kristen never refused. These owners, you really have, we don't get away with anything in this world. God has a moral order in the universe, and except they repent and deeply and turn to God and ask His forgiveness and repent of this activity, they are looking forward to standing before God in judgment, like the rest of us are. The Bible says, as I live, says the Lord, every knee shall bow to me, and every tongue shall confess that Jesus Christ is Lord. So the only good thing about this is that they're not going to get away with anything, but we still want to stop it now. I'll read on here. Kristen says, I almost came to suicide because I didn't know there was another way of life, Kristen said. She called the Salvation Army and several churches saying she wanted out, and they said they were unable to, they weren't prepared to help dancers. On the seventh call to church, she was told they might be able to help her, and they put her in contact with a woman, Carolyn McKenzie. Carolyn brought Kristen into her home and made her feel like part of the family. Skipping down, Kristen lived with Carolyn for a year and began attending cosmology school. She eventually moved into her own apartment, but still lived with Carol on weekends. Carolyn and her husband, Kristen said, Carolyn and her husband and son have been like family to me. They don't hurt me. So that's Kristen's story, and shows the true nature of the women and children who suffer by men spending money on sexual entertainment. We're talking about the related entities now: strip clubs, peep shows, chat lines, and the like. We're going to take, I'm going to ask you to watch two educational messages coming up about our basic anchor issue of the sanctity of life for this show, and then we'll be right back.
You make your way through life, deciding who you are, how you feel, and what you believe. Sure, it's hard, but you do what you know is right. Maybe your voice isn't the loudest, but it's the voice you dare to listen to.
If you're facing an unexpected pregnancy, call 1-800-550-4900.
When I found out I was pregnant, I thought I would lose my job.
My boyfriend told me to choose between him and the baby.
I worried about staying in school.
I was already struggling to care for one child. My parents told me I wasn't ready to be a mom, so I had an abortion.
I had physical problems afterwards.
I went from relationship to relationship.
I hated myself.
I started to have nightmares. I cried when I saw a pregnant woman.
I tried to commit suicide.
I couldn't bond with the child I later had.
I tried to numb my pain with alcohol.
I struggled with depression. I had trouble conceiving again.
You see, abortion didn't solve our problems.
It just created different ones.
Each of us thought we were the only ones struggling afterward.
Now we realize many women regret their choice.
That's why we are silent no more.
We found help and healing, and you can too. Call or go online today.
Welcome back, everyone. I was just reading you the part excerpts from the interview with Kristen, a dancer at a strip club, and how she was, the cost of the lust and the result of men, the money that men spend on sexual entertainment, what it does cost these girls who are lured into providing the entertainment or the sexual service for you. I'm going to go back and read over one or two paragraphs again. She said that in addition to dancing, that Kristen would get called into the office at least weekly to have sex with an owner or a bouncer. So she really, these girls really are slaves. Some women who refused the desires of the owner were killed, and suicide notes were left on the cars of other dancers. So Kristen never refused. Again, this comes back to a common technique I pointed out among traffickers, pimps, pornographers, is to kill girls who don't cooperate in the presence of other women, so in order to intimidate the other women and keep them in line with fear and into cooperating and doing what they want. And Kristen said she never refused. It was out of fear. It's all possible because of the buyer. A buyer, again, is anyone involved in a commercial sex act, regardless of how small or how remote it may seem. It could be all that money that is spent in bars, in drinks in a strip club, in adult magazine, pay-per-view pornography somewhere, all feeds into a great river of money, creating the demand for women to provide those services for that money. Could we show clip number 2 on the mini DV? Who is this buyer? Who is the buyer?
No market can survive without demand for its product. Without steady profits, the sex market and its exploitation of human beings would cease. Unfortunately, the demand for commercial sex is great. Demand, fueled by the desires and whims of the buyer. Every purchase made, no matter how small, profits and sustains the sex market. And while the buyer convinces himself that a click on a porn site, a drink at a strip club, or a visit to an escort harms no one, these actions help to keep the sex market and traffickers themselves in business. Without this demand, there would be no victims, which begs the question, who is this buyer?
Welcome back, everyone. So who is this buyer that's spending money on sexual entertainment? And we're talking today in the related industries of strip clubs, porn shops, and the like. What leads males to go to strip club? Well, in my experience indicates that a principal motivation of men is going to strip clubs is boredom, simply boredom. They don't know how to have a real life. I'll repeat that, boredom. They simply don't have a real life. They need to learn how. Another motivation may be a sense of frustration from defeat in life. They may be men who've had goals but have been unable to achieve them, and they're frustrated. Life can be tough. And they have settled for the easy way out of substituting the excitement of fantasies for a real life. They may have illusions of, they may be men who have the illusions of success. We've all heard of the so-called wealthy businessmen who buy sexual services, but this is the fact that they need to buy sexual services that they are buying. It shows that they are really moral failures. I often say that it is juvenile men who are buyers of sexual services, and I say that for a reason, because it's self-centered, and we associated self-centered with children. Children think only of themselves. They haven't learned, better yet, it's all that they naturally know about. It's maturity. Mature people are other-directed. They think of others along with the needs of others, along with themselves, and get a great satisfaction out of serving others and supplying others' needs instead of seeking their own gratification. But all this buying of sexual services is about seeking one's own gratification. Therefore, it's selfishness, and by definition, it's immature or juvenile. But let me also mention one more thing about this environment, that the environment of sex markets is a dangerous environment. The women and children are in the greatest danger, as we've seen. The pimps, the club owners, organized crime, organized mafia are all pornographers, and the examples we've seen are all a threat and danger to these women and children being held in white slavery. But also the buyers are a danger to the girls, to the women and children, because there are always the psychopaths involved in this industry and as buyers. So it's so sad, but the women have the danger coming from both directions, and they're the ones who don't deserve it. So what about these men who then frequent paid sexual services? I've said it's because basically they don't have a life. Well, and they've settled for to substitute the fantasy of paid sexual services for the challenges of a real life, real relationships, and achievement in life. But it's not hopeless. The reason we don't have a life is that we haven't learned how to. There is a way to do it. And if anyone is willing, they can learn. And everyone can be a success, and including the men who frequent the sex markets. They don't have to stay that way. It doesn't really matter what your beginnings are. It's how we end up in life that counts. They haven't learned the way to have a real life of meaningful relationships and satisfying achievements. Well, how do you have a life then? What's the method that's open to everybody? The first step, I would say, is to get serious about life. You have to take a step back and take a look at life, not only your own life, but about life itself, and start asking serious questions instead of self-centered, pleasure-filled activities and questions about how can I look at these pictures, or I want to do more of this. Get serious about life. God has given us all a mind. We want to stop drifting through life. So we ask the question, you have to ask the serious questions of life. What is the purpose of life? Is it to look at is it all just about getting excitement from from lust that costs so much to other people to provide for you? Is it just to enjoy the passing pleasures of life? Is that all there is? So once you start asking serious questions, what's the purpose of life? One must figure out where can you go to get answers to questions like this. You can't go to the as a child growing up, I began to ask these questions, and you start looking around at where you are. Is it the people who write books? Is it the psychologists? So I looked in a couple of psychologists' book, and as a child, I could see that they weren't very deep. And that it's not them. It's not the college professors. It's not the authors of books. They don't have the answers. We should come to the logical conclusion that the only authority that can answer these questions, the ultimate authority and only authority, is the Creator God who created this moral universe, ourselves, and we who live in it. And so logic should tell us, should tell you, to get the answers to the important questions in life, we must go to God. Now, if you can't bring yourself to do that, if we can't get ourselves away from the passing pleasures to long enough to think seriously about this, I don't think we're ever going to have a successful life. So we want to get serious about finding what God's will is and His authority for these answers. The Bible says that anyone who wants to do God's will or to know God's will, God will, in effect, God will make Himself known. If you really want to know the answer to these questions, if you really are humble enough to want to do what God might ask of you, and He'll never ask of you more than you can do without the help He can give you. The Bible assures us that He will reveal Himself to you. This is why some people know God, and God is a reality to them because they wanted to know, and God revealed it to them, and they sought out a relationship with Him and the life that comes with it. This is why some people have that. God is real to them, and the knowledge, and God is not real to other people because they never wanted to know. They never seriously sought God out. So this is, the unbelievers can't understand the reality of the believers. It's only by coming to know God yourself. So our attitude in seeking the answers, of wanting to know, toward God, of respecting God, of caring to find out from Him is pivotal. I would recommend start studying the Bible with a prayerful attitude. God can communicate with us through the Bible. I mentioned how at the beginning, in the introduction of the show, that the divine inspiration and authority of the Bible really has been proven by its many, many prophecies that were made in ancient times and fulfilled over the centuries. The outline of world history was prophesied hundreds of years, 600 years BC. The succession of world empires ruling over the area of the Holy Land, Babylon. Medo-Persian Empire would follow the Babylonian Empire, and it did. And then it was prophesied that after that, a third empire would arise, which was the Greco-Macedonian, ruling the Mediterranean center of the earth there. And the fourth empire that was prophesied to arise was the Roman Empire, and its successive divisions down through the centuries to our very day to day through the Holy Roman Empire. And even the prophecy of the return of the Jews to Israel that we're witnessing today, and was prophesied over 2,400 years ago in the Bible, beginning in the Old Testament. And the world that this returned, and the quarrel would produce a world crisis over Jerusalem that would lead to the second coming of Christ. Things like this were written over 2,400 years ago, and they have come to pass in the Bible, and they've come to pass in the real world. All these things demonstrate the divine inspiration of the Bible, because it's beyond human capability to make such accurate predictions. So in turning to the Bible to begin to seek God, and He can communicate to us through the Bible, find a good Bible-based church, find perhaps some good Bible-based people to discuss this with, to find out more. And if you're sincere, God will reveal himself to you. It's his desire to do so. And what you gain out of this, in the New Testament, several times in the four Gospels, when a young man would ask Jesus, what do I need to do to be saved or to inherit eternal life? Jesus would say, give a kind of twofold answer. Keep the commandments, and then number two, put me first and follow me. And so that's in broad outline terms, the way to a new life. Now, why is this a new life? Why is this a real life? The kind that you won't be bored and want to go to strip clubs anymore? Well, for one thing, there's the life fulfilling purpose for which you were born, to be a son of God or daughter, of this relationship with God through Jesus Christ. This fills that inner vacuum. It replaces the boredom with joy, but there are many other benefits that come with it. That God promises when you make peace with him, you will get eternal life. But he also promises more. Whoever follows me will receive multiple relationships, because you enter a community of believers. And in that community, you have older women who become mothers to you. You have contemporary women who become your sisters, other men who become your brothers. So you get the relationships, for meaningful relationships for a new life. And it's certainly not boring anymore. More than that, and in addition to that, there's the benefit of working with God, of learning, following Christ and learning from him. And he'll lead you into knowledge and wisdom and into achievement. So there you are. You can have the relation. This is the way to get a life. This is the lasting way to get a life. It's far better than the businessman who's maybe has achieved some goals, become wealthy even, but is out buying sexual entertainment and enslaving women because he's morally defective individual. That's not an empty person. I come back to my reason for bringing this up was that in my experience, a major reason that men drift into related markets, like they go from visualization to actualization. The next stage of actualization is the related markets. They drift into strip clubs because they're bored, because they don't have a life. And God has provided the way to have a real life. And you won't be bored anymore, and you won't go to strip clubs anymore. And this will help solve our whole problem. May I ask the control room to show clip number 7, if buyers stop buying.
The sex trade continues, unabated, due to constant demand. Uncountable numbers of human beings are enslaved and destroyed year after year so others can profit, and buyers can satisfy a selfish urge. There are many ways to reduce worldwide trafficking in persons, but the most immediate is for buyers to stop buying. Without buyers, there is no sex market. Without a market, there are no victims.
So there you see, my friends, the benefits that would come to freeing all these women and children if you would just stop buying, if men would just stop being buyers and get a life. And the great secret to getting a real life is fulfilling God's purpose for why he created you. And this will bring along many relationships in this life, many meaningful relationships. You'll have your life won't be empty anymore. It'll bring along a new way of life in which you learn wisdom and knowledge and begin to have God will lead you into real achievements. that are satisfied, and he's created people for all of these things. He'd like to give us these blessings, but we have to take him seriously. And think about the big questions of life. What is the purpose of life? Who is the authority to answer these questions? And go to the Bible to get that authoritative answer and change our life. And with it comes the blessing of eternal life. God promises in the Bible that man does not have to die forever. That he wants people to have the gift of eternal life through a relationship with him. But we have to cooperate. And this is the solution to our sex trafficking problem. It's the solution to all the world's problems, really. But the point, case in point, is we're talking about doing away with the sex markets by eliminating the demand. And you say, well, I'm only one person. I can't change the whole world. That's true, but number one, you can start with yourself, make peace with God, start with yourself, and rediscover your own life, a new life, and influence other people. And one day, the good things can become a reality. Well, with that, we're getting near the end of our show. I want to again take a minute and mention to young people, young girls, traffickers they know how to spot lonely girls. Traffickers and pimps look for lonely girls, maybe kids that aren't dating other kids in high school or junior high. They think they should be. Traffickers look for those attention-starved, very lonely kids who may be loners, and they enter into your life posing as friends, perhaps a boyfriend, an older boyfriend, giving you that attention you should have gotten from your father and probably didn't. But they're only deceiving you, whether you meet them at the mall or on the internet. Don't go that route. You too can get serious about God and turn to him and let him guide you into fulfilling your life's desires. And likewise, if you're in an abusive situation at home, don't jump from the frying pan into the fire by running away unless you go to children and family youth services or a shelter or to another where it is safe. Do not go with someone you meet on the internet. A very common thing is to run away, and these pimps and traffickers are waiting at the bus stop in the big cities. They can spot you a mile away. So with those warnings, the solution to the young people is really to seek the safety that comes from God also. With that, we're running out of time. We're continuing to make shows. I'm going to close, and we'll see you next time.
Precious Lord, take my hand, lead me on, help me stand. I am tired, I am weak, and I am worn. Through the storm, through the night, lead me on to the light. Take my hand, precious Lord, lead me home. my way grows drear, precious Lord, linger near when my life is almost gone. Hear my cry, hear my call, hold my hand lest I fall. Take my hand, precious Lord, lead me home. Take my hand, precious Lord.